Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and if you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. On this episode, I'm excited to welcome my friend Andy Saigh. Andy is a social media specialist at the University of Northern Iowa, also known as UNI, and very knowledgeable in the space of content creation. Andy, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, man. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those who don't know who you are, who may be listening, let's just do a quick intro on who you are and what you do at UNI.
Sure. Like you said, my name's Andy Saigh. I'm the social media specialist. Um, Here at the university, that can take on a number of different hats. So, some days you might see me running around campus with a camera, whether it's recording video, capturing photos, things of that nature. Other days, you'll see me sitting at the desk, scheduling out months of content at a time. So, it's kind of just a hodgepodge of things, but my main role is overseeing the moderation and content creation for all of our main social channels, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it. If it's the UNI official channel, I have a hand in a lot of the things that go on there.
Yeah, absolutely. We met about 10 years ago, which is crazy to think about. And I've always known, like, ever since I've known you, you've been a huge fan of UNI. And I feel like this is kind of your dream job now, circling all things back. So, talk about what are some things that you did, I guess, that helped you land this position?
Sure. So yeah, like you said, always been a huge UNI fan. My dad went to school here. He ran track when he was here, so he was always heavily involved in the athletic department. So growing up, I was always coming to football, basketball camps, things like that were up here in Cedar Falls. So I'm from Des Moines originally, but I also like to say that I essentially grew up on campus here at UNI. Um, so yeah, met Ryan at UNI. We were going through all of our business classes together. Um, but yeah, after I graduated, it kind of was a little bit of a winding road back to campus for me. I ended up moving back to Des Moines. I worked as a marketing specialist for Home Services of Iowa for a while. Um, I
And I
was
remember
also
you like taking time on the weekends where you would like drive up and just do photography and like all sorts of content stuff for the athletics programs. Was that kind of a big, and I
Yep.
admire you for doing that. Was that like a big reason that kind of pushed you towards this?
Yep. So, and that was what I was going to get to. That was one of the first times that marketing specialist jobs at home services. That was one of the first times I was given a camera and said, "Go capture content." And so a lot of that stuff I was self-taught. So a lot of it was learning on my own. YouTube University was a big help with that. But yeah, when I was not doing projects for work, I was taking my camera and I was going up to Cedar Falls for football, basketball games, volleyball games, wrestling, all that stuff. And I was trying new things, trying to figure out what worked best for different kind of looks that I was going for, styles, things like that. And essentially 4 years worth of um, learning and trying new things and doing that self-taught stuff like for free for the athletics department at UNI and using those opportunities of networking with the people that were there to kind of
And
get
let's
my
talk about that quick.
foot in
Like
the
you did,
door.
like you said, you did that for free. So I, mean, I don't know how many people would be willing to go above and beyond to do something like you did for free, just to kind of put your name on the map, which eventually led to what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean that's so. There's a quote from motivational speaker Eric Thomas that's I'm trying to remember it now. Um, I think it's you won't be successful until I don't have to give you a dime to do what you do. So it's one of those things where you have to have the passion for it because there were a lot of times when things were hard. Didn't know or didn't necessarily know when or if things would ever pay off. Um, but it's the passion and the perseverance then for like continuing to like work on your craft and connect with the right people um, and things of that nature that ended up when a position opened up here. I was recommended to apply for that job, so things kind of worked out well for me in that sense then.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for how you got there for sure. So let's talk about your current job right now. So I guess, talk about what are some of your most successful content strategies that you're doing right now for the university to engage students and alumni, whether through social media, email, just talk about that at a high level.
Sure. So yeah, and that's talking about it at the highest level has kind of been one of the biggest adjustments for me, to be completely honest. In the past, I've always been so focused on like that granular, like digging really deep into some of those analytics and demographics and things of that nature. But when I'm coming into stuff now and thinking about things from a university standpoint, it's more that 10,000 foot view. And so a lot of it comes down to just, again, identifying your audience and being like laser focused on understanding what that audience wants, and not necessarily what you want them to know, but what they want to see out of your platform. And kind of tailoring what you want them to know into the content that they want to see. So, some of those
Yeah, you
things
don't
like,
you don't really have to get in the weeds, but like I was just curious, is it like testimonials from graduate students? Is it
well,
like,
a lot of it
interviewing
is like
people? Yeah.
looking at our Instagram, for example. It's probably been one of my biggest success stories. We've grown our Instagram by over 4,000 followers in um, a little over a year and a half or so. So that's been pretty cool. But our biggest adjustment there was going from, general campus scenes of buildings to more like student focus, showing the student experience. Really digging into video on Instagram has been a huge win for us.
Yeah, and outside of Instagram, are you guys like investing in TikTok? Are you doing Facebook or YouTube? I guess what are some of those other channels that you're focusing on?
So our two main focuses for platforms, especially in the higher ed industry, are Instagram and YouTube, specifically for the reels and shorts aspects. Um, One of the main priorities of my job is to help increase enrollment, and so my main target audience a lot of times when I'm posting are those prospective students. So we do also some advertising on Snapchat. We advertise on TikTok as well. Um, it's unfortunate that we are no longer able to post new organic content on TikTok due to the state of Iowa and some of the government regulations surrounding that. But we are still present there. So that's kind of how we look at that from, again, that 10,000 foot view.
So, what are some trends that you're seeing, I guess, for content creation from universities, whether it's their student body, athletic programs? I guess talk about some of the trends that you're seeing in the content creation space and how higher ed is trying to adapt to this.
I think it's really interesting. Coming in, a lot of things were more focused around like the higher production value, almost like TV commercial spot type things. And what I've seen that's at least worked really well for us is more of the authentic, like student voice or even employee voice come through in more of like the quick turnaround, YouTube short, Instagram reel type things. Like 15 seconds is all you have to catch somebody's attention and really convert them, or not even necessarily convert them, but to at least get them interested in looking more into what we have to offer.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question that's kind of in the weeds of content a little bit, but talk about how you're repurposing. So, like, if you're filming a long form YouTube video for you and I, whether it's a testimonial, whatever the type of content is, talk about how you repurpose that content into shorts, social media, that type of thing.
It's really interesting you bring that up. So I think it was a little over a year ago now, we were featured on Amazon Prime's series The College Tour.
Yeah, I
So
saw
it's
that.
yeah, so it was actually, it's a when you look at the episode as a whole, it's 30 minutes long, but it's broken down into, I think it was 8 segments that were each 2 minutes long. So what we did was we were able to then use those 2 minute segments as shorter form, but also long form content on YouTube. And then within each of those 2 minute segments, we were able to pull sound bites from the students and faculty that were represented in each of those areas of campus. And then those turned into some of our YouTube shorts, Instagram reels, really those student voice testimonials that have really produced well for us on social.
Yeah, repurposing content's become a huge skill in the world of content creation, as you know. So let's talk about AI a little bit now, Andy. Like, I'm curious. You asked me the other day when I presented to you and I about AI. You were asking me kind of what I was doing with content. So I'm curious to see what you're doing now. Talk about how you're kind of leveraging AI in the content creation space. Like, how are you leveraging it? What tools are you using? Just kind of talk about your experience using AI right now.
It's actually interesting. We just got done with a webinar from Adobe right before I hopped on this podcast. So it was all about some of the use cases for their generative AI and how it integrates with Adobe Express. And that's actually one of the programs that we use university wide here. So some of those like animation tools that you can just text to animate, things like that, that kind of add a little bit more of a visually engaging aspect to some of these static graphics. That can be a game changer. And I know one of the stats that they brought up that our team was really excited about was some of the video editing capabilities. They had use cases where it took previously it would take an editor 2 hours to make a certain edit and do some certain things, and then all of a sudden with this generative AI they were able to do it in 20 minutes. So it's a lot of the efficiency based things. In terms of what I'm currently doing, a lot of it really isn't content creation based, but it kind of helps to automate some of the busy tasks. So um, as a social media specialist, I'm also a resource for other areas of campus. And so if say the Department of Exercise Science wants to start a social media page and they want a template for a social media posting plan, I can then go into ChatGPT and give it the bare bones, and then I can kind of customize it to what that department needs from there. So then I'm not coming up with a plan from scratch essentially every
Yeah,
single
so
time.
ideation essentially, and you're essentially acting as a consultant for all these different departments and professors and everyone else on campus that wants to pick your brain.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure. So where do you think it's going in higher ed then? Obviously AI is very threatening, but talking about the content stuff too, where do you think AI is going inside higher ed in terms of a content creation strategy? I guess what's kind of the buzz right now with higher ed and how they view AI?
It's kind of an interesting take, depending on what lens you're looking at it with. I've heard a lot of positive things. I know, at least from other creatives across campus, people are really excited about all the capabilities and things that they're going to be able to do with it. But then, if you're looking at it from more of the educator side, it's a little bit more worrisome because they want to make sure that their students are still, getting the most out of their education without without, using AI to kind of get around some of the harder challenges that are presented there for a reason. Um, so yeah, I mean, again, it depends on what side you're looking at it from, but I would also say that overall it's a like a very positive sentiment in general, just because of the sheer capability, like the amount of capabilities that are going to be there.
I think that's a common answer across most industries when it comes to AI. So let's talk about now OpenAI's Sora. I'm sure you've heard of Sora and Google Veo. These are like these AI video generation models. China just had a big one that came out. I posted about it a couple days ago.
So
Where do you see this going with AI generated video, and like how do you see this going with what you do?
Well, I think it's interesting. We were looking at some of those different platforms the other day. Well, not the other day, but recently, in terms of using them for recruitment materials, whether it be personalizing some different videos that are based on, understanding a person's name and then what program they showed interest in on a questionnaire or something like that that we then would use for our records. But um, I think a lot of it's going to come down to that recruitment aspect and being able to have hopefully a more personalized touch on some of those materials.
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing I think it's going to be big for is stock video, like B-roll footage behind, narrators talking. I think that's going to be a big use case. Also, drone footage. I'm not saying Cedar Falls, Iowa in particular, but all the data that they have on big cities like New York, Paris, all sorts of things like that. We're going to see an increase, I think, of AI generated drone footage for these huge landmarks.
I think it's funny you bring that up as well. The I think his title is digital asset coordinator. that's actually just a few offices down the hall here. He was talking about he's already, I think, using or at least testing some of the capabilities of those AI generated B roll packages. And some of the things that he's brought back to our creative team meetings have been pretty impressive. So I think the door is already wide open when it comes to some of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what Sora is going to be when it's fully released to the public. So I want to circle back before we get into the marketing quacks portion of this podcast, which is my favorite. I do want to circle back and ask you one more question that I forgot to mention. What would you say is that number one differentiating factor between what you guys do at UNI in terms of a content strategy versus the hundreds of other universities or higher ed institutions that are out there trying to put together a content strategy? You mentioned authenticity, but what are one or two other things that I guess separates your guys' content or content strategy from everyone else?
I think it's a good question. Again, my number one answer would still be that authenticity and hearing the student's voice. When I've looked at other institutions, at least here in the state and the Midwest region, a little bit, a lot of it just seems to be, pretty pictures of flowers that are the school's color, and we want to
Or
be
sports or football?
right, and so when you look at our feeds, I want people to be able to see, like, oh, this is what a normal Tuesday night on campus would be when campus activities board is holding a movie night in Lawther Field. Like, I want people to then be able to go where they aren't currently at or not currently able to go. So if that's somebody that's 3,000 miles away, then they want to see what a campus activity evening is going to be like. I want to be able to bring them there through either the photos or videos that I'm capturing.
Yeah, I'm trying
um,
to make it as valuable as possible for prospective students to make it, be what's the word I'm looking for, as representative as possible to what the actual experience is as a student on UNI versus just generic stuff about sports or, like you said, flowers or big buildings or big statues. You're trying to really hone in on that student experience so that potential students or prospects can see, okay, if I was a student, this is what it would actually be like.
Exactly. And so then the other part of it too is balancing out some of that information that parents want to know on other platforms. So, like on Facebook, we have a lot of almost not necessarily BuzzFeed type articles, but more content that is driven towards parents that are going to be asking different questions and kind of laying out some of the answers that way. So that way it's kind of balanced based on the platform that we're posting on. It's going to that specific audience. And there again, it goes
That
back to being laser focused on who you're trying to get to.
that makes sense. So you're also looking at user feedback too to kind of formulate some of the content strategy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's all about, um, metrics like views and things like that are always good to get. It always feels good when you have a 20,000 view video pop off on Instagram. But when you have parents responding in the comments saying how helpful this article was, or how helpful, for example, we had 3 comments on Friday last week about how helpful our orientation staff has been during this welcoming and all this big information dump that is orientation. Things like that are what I really value the most when it comes to some of those metrics.
Yeah, that's a great point. So now let's get into marketing quacks. This is my favorite portion of the podcast. So Andy, I have to ask you, what are some marketing, gimmicks, some tricks that you've seen people do in the content creation space? It doesn't have to be tailored to higher ed, just content creation in general. What are some of those things that you see people do that just kind of make your blood boil as a professional?
One of the things that is really annoying to me are the little Instagram reels that are 5-second clips that just hack play after play after play, because that's the whole da 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 whatever idea is, read the caption, and then all of a sudden it's a book that you have to read through. It's like, you can give me to the point of that whole spiel in the 5 seconds that it took you to post that clip. And I would rather get to the point and then continue learning um, than have to spend 5 minutes extra compared to the 5 seconds that it took for this clip to keep playing over and over and over again. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird, different little take on a social media ick, but that's probably one of my biggest ones. It's like
Yeah,
a
I would say
little
my one of my
algorithm hack.
biggest one of my biggest ones right now, and this is kind of a general thing. I just had Alex Myers on the podcast. You should listen to some of the episodes I've had with him. But he talked about, and I completely agree with him, how algorithms favor polarization, and it's so true. You scroll through your Instagram feed, TikTok, Facebook, whatever you are, you're most likely going to see organically something that's polarizing. Oh my god, he said that. Oh my god, what is this, what is that, something to get you to hate something or love something based on your emotions. And that's probably my biggest gimmick with content creation. It's not value, it's more based on what's the most polarizing that the algorithm's going to serve you, where you're going to react, you're going to like, comment, watch, so then it can serve you more of that and then serve you ads because now you're emotional. And when you're emotional, you're more intended to buy something from the platform.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about it. That's literally the human psychology right there. Consumer behavior 101. Um,
Long-winded answer, but that's been something that's really been boiling my blood.
yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's we've had some discussions in our office as well about some of those like polarizing topics, and maybe like if we wanted to, get into some of that stuff. Um, but again, we've always come back to we'd rather be the authentic ones compared to, well, let's just hop on this trend and we don't really care if it negatively impacts somebody else.
Right. Because what's that
Um,
going to do in the long run versus build trust from a university? Sure, you might get the likes and you might get the views, but is it going to convert? That's what
right.
ultimately matters.
Yeah. There's the school of thought that um, any engagement is good engagement, but if it's a negative comment, that it does have an impact on the reputation of us as a university. So um, we'd rather be on the other side of that, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Andy, this has been fun. It's been an insightful conversation about content creation. I personally learned more about what you do. So, any final notes for those listening and just general content creation advice, marketing advice for what you do in the higher ed space?
I mean, I guess in terms of content creation, it's capture as much as you can. Take your camera with you everywhere you go. I have my little own. I know one of the trends right now is it's like life on digital. So I have my own old point and shoot camera with me that I take everywhere I go. Um, the more options that you have when you're going to make those content and visually centered posts, the better. So yeah, capture
Yeah,
as much as
absolutely.
you can, have options, and yeah, just have fun with it. I think that's been one of the biggest things, and the thing that's led to a lot of my success is having a lot of fun with the job that I do have, getting to build relationships with the student leaders that are here on campus and other faculty members, um, and then using those relationships to be able to create a lot more authentic and engaging content for all of our consumers.
Yeah, that's a great final point you just made there. So, where can people find you online to learn more?
So you can follow me on Instagram at andy.creates, and it's CRE, the number 8 and S. Shoot, you can also follow me and add me as a friend on Facebook, Andy Saigh, Saigh. Yeah, so you'll see a bunch of you and I content. A lot of it is all as much fun as we can have on campus, and love to show you everything that we have to offer.
Absolutely. Well, Andy, thank you so much again for your time. And thank you to everyone for listening for this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. Be sure to tune in again to the next episode. And of course, go Cats.
Go Cats, baby.